Welcome to the Francis Micro Homestead. This is our pressure treated garden fence. There's two reasons why we built this fence, and it's for aesthetics and it's to keep out the deer. When we first moved in, we had T-posts and this cattle paneling already existing on the property. What we wanted to do is we wanted to reuse as much as we could. So, what are you doing? We wanted to reuse as much as we could. So we had put in the T-posts and put in this paneling, but we didn't like how it looked, and we couldn't quite figure out how to build gates into the T-posts. So we decided to scrap it and to start fresh with pressure treated wood and to reuse that cattle paneling. This garden measures 52 feet by 35 feet with an additional 8 foot by 32 foot run for our meat chickens. There are 3 gates for the main garden and 1 gate for the meat chicken area. So we had to take out the old paneling and the old T-posts, which seemed a little bit too difficult for what it was. The panels came out pretty easily, but when it came to the T-posts, no matter what trick or tools that I used, I could not get those T-posts out. It got to a point where I started bending the T-posts trying to get them out. Rather than renting some expensive equipment, I just got my truck, put it on 4-wheel drive, got some chains and pulled it out with the help of my dad. One trick that I learned while hooking up a trailer to a hitch on the back of the truck is to use the cable, the band that holds the truck bed door, wrap it around the peg that latches onto the truck bed door. It leaves that door at a 45-degree angle, and if you have a camera, it points directly down at the camera, which makes it great for hooking up a trailer hitch, and in this case backing up to the point where the chain was so that we could hook it up and easily move on and pull out all the T-posts quick and easy.
That's the way you pull us down. Thank you for your support.
The ground that we have is super, super tough. There's about 6 to 8 inches of good dirt on top, but the rest is just compacted clay. We were originally going to rent an auger. The augers at the big box store locally was $120 a day to rent. And on Amazon, we found one for $180 to buy. So we ended up buying the auger and using that. And we actually saved money by doing so because we ended up spending multiple days trying to dig these holes and ended up saving us money instead of renting the auger from the big box store. So this program that I use is called SketchUp. Most of my projects that I do, I run it through SketchUp and build it digitally so that when I am ready to build it physically, this makes it easy for me. All I have to do is put in the measurements of what the size of the wood I need for the build, and it goes through and tells me how many pieces that I will need for the whole project. And then I can do a cut diagram, and it goes through and tells me how many pieces I need, the length, and how many parts are in that. So it's pretty nice. So this, for example, this wood here, this has 3 cuts in it. Looks like it's going to be 2 gate braces and a side part of the gate. And so C, C, J, which is C, C, and J. And I need 3 of these, so 3 of my 12-foot boards I'm going to cut the same. And all I have to do is just go through each one of these and follow the instructions up until I finished all my cuts. And as long as I keep them organized and piled up in the right place, building it will be a breeze. So one thing I didn't show in the video is cutting the pressure treated wood. It needs to be treated once you cut it. I actually treated this with a light colored stain that I had left over. I had plenty of it and I didn't want to buy a color that matched the pressure treated wood. So I ended up just using that lighter color for the pressure treated wood. And in the future, once the wood starts to fade, I'll be able to true up all the color and get everything all unified and looking good again. So how I built this fence is it's in 8-foot sections. So every 8 feet is a post. And I have these posts. These are 8-foot posts and they're 2 feet in the ground. So they stick up 6 feet above the ground. So at 4 feet is where the panels sit. So the panels go from 4 feet down to the ground to about 2 inches underneath the ground level. And then we have the 2 feet above the fence. So the 2 feet above the fence, we're not quite sure what we're gonna do with it. We can cap these off as is and run some landscaping lights, or we can run some more paneling at the top to make it a true 6-foot fence so that the deer can't jump over the fence. Or we can cut the posts down, make it a little bit more manageable and a little bit more pretty, but we're not quite sure what we want to do with it yet, so we're going to leave them as is. How we set the posts is we put them directly in the dirt. It's better to put in concrete to stabilize them and make them stronger, but for the purpose that we're using this garden fence, it does not need to be in concrete, and the dirt itself, as we've learned, is hard enough that it's going to hold this fence up for years to come. Some may think that because we did not put these in cement, that these posts will sink. I highly doubt it. They will, as the dirt in the ground was so hard to dig that I don't think anything is going to move these posts. If anything, they'll move back and forth, left and right, but that's something that's manageable and that can be taken care of and maintained next couple of months and next couple of years. I'm not worried about it, and it's going to be strong, and it's going to do what we need to do. So between each post is a 92-inch beam, and this beam is held up with pocket holes and screws, and the screws are 3-inch exterior screws. And this is sufficient enough to be able to hold up the panel. The panel itself is a thick gauge wire, so once it's up on the wood, it actually holds the wood together and strengthens it up pretty nicely. How we attach these panels onto the wood, we use fence staples and staple them into the wood. We had 2 different kinds. We had a thicker gauge and a smaller gauge. If you use a smaller gauge, you'll need to use more staples. If you use a thicker gauge, you don't need to use as much. In the corners, you'll need to, because of how the corners meet, I had to put in an extra piece of wood so that the panel could have something to bite into. I didn't want any loose ends or any weak points in the garden fence to keep all the wildlife out and to keep it strong. How I did this was I just got a 2x4, put pocket holes in, screwed it into the post, and then was able to attach the panel onto it. In this corner here, I actually have a 12-foot post, and the reason for this is so that in the spring we can attach a clothesline to it. But that's a project that I'll end up doing in the spring. For our main gate, the one that's closest to our home, we decided to build this pergola. And it's not just for looks. We also built on the side here places to put more panels up or put string so that we can have vine growing vegetables or flowers can grow and make this a little bit more pretty. We have 3 gates going into our garden. Each is built the same width and size, and each using the same type of hardware. These 3 gates are mainly for ease of access for us, to be able to put in the compost without having to walk around the whole garden, easy to come in from the house, and easy to pull in our supplies, tools, and everything else from the garden from the shop. So SketchUp was the bread and butter of this project. It allowed me to make all the purchases, all the cuts, and everything without thinking twice about it. When digging the posts, all we had to do was just measure 8 feet apart, and because each beam between the posts was cut the same length, each hole was measured the same distance. So it made it a lot easier to gut through and dig all these posts and put them in and attach the beams. The garden gates as well was easy to build. I was able to pull up the unique angle of these cross beams, be able to put it on the miter saw and cut it without thinking or doing any extra math. So the great thing about this miter saw is it has a stop so that I can adjust the blade cut halfway through the board on these braces where they cross and still be structural sound. On the far side next to the chicken coop, we've actually built a 32 by 8 foot section for our meat chickens. We don't have the meat chickens yet. Next spring we'll buy a few, test it out, and make sure that we're able to do it humanely and safely, and see if it's something that our family can manage in the future. We're excited to do that project and can't wait to see how it goes. So we didn't have enough of the panels to go around our whole fence and around the meat chicken area. So we bought a lower gauge, cheaper paneling that works just fine. It's a lower gauge, so it's easier to break through. For what we're using it and the type of predators that would be around, we're not too worried about it. on the lower gauge wire. Instead of using a fence staple like we've used with this thicker gauge, you can actually use galvanized staples that you can put in your staple gun and be able to easily attach the panel to the wood fast and easy. I'm glad this garden fence is done, and I hope that you learned something from this video and it inspired you to do your own projects at home. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and hit subscribe and follow us for more. Thank you very much.